Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel AJ Media. My name is Ashok Joshi and in this video we'll be seeing the introduction part of Linux. We'll be exploring some of the basic stuffs that anyone should know before getting into command line. So without any further delay, let's start with the video. So before getting into Linux, let's understand what are softwares and how many types of softwares are there. So software is a set of instruction. You can also call it as a set of programs that is basically used in order to operate computers, and in order to execute a specific task we use something which is called as software. In simpler terms, let me tell you, software is a collection of instruction that tells a computer how to work and what to do. There are two types of softwares. The number one is called as application software. So what does this application software mean? Application software is a software which is required to meet end users requirement. Okay, so that sounds interesting, right? So basically, if you want to browse internet, what you will do, you will go to Chrome or either any other browser, for example Firefox or Safari, and you will go and you will search the content that you want to see, right? So that particular browser is residing in your computer, right? That browser is a application software which you can use anytime for surfing internet. Similarly, there is word processors. For example, if you want to work on Microsoft Word, that is a application software. Okay, and if you want to use some text editor, for example if you are working on HTML, okay, for example, so what you will do, you will go to a text editor, for example like Notepad, or you can use VS Code or Atom, anything. Okay, so that text editor, Notepad, VS Code or Atom, these are called as an application software. So an application software is a software that is installed in an operating system, so that sits above the operating system. You can install application software and you can also remove application software in a particular operating system. We'll see what is an operating system as well, but for now consider application software is a software which is required to meet end users requirement, and also similarly goes for the databases as well. So if you are a database administrator, you will be using something which is called as Oracle, MySQL, based upon what kind of database management systems you guys use. So that covers application software. Now let's see what are system softwares. These are the software programs that are specifically designed to run a computer's application programs and hardware. So it is basically a kind of system software that acts as an interface between hardware components and user. So every computer must have at least one operating system to run programs. So for example, application like browsers, Microsoft Office, Notepad, games, etc., they will need some environment to run and perform its task, right? So what this operating system does here is, the operating system helps the user to communicate with the computer without knowing how to speak the computer's language, and it is not possible for the user to use any computer or mobile device without an operating system. That is obvious, right? Because computers understand binary language, ones and zeros. You only think, can you communicate with the computers in the language binary, ones and zeros? It's next to impossible. That is the reason you have something which is called as programs that will convert all the instructions into a binary format so that the computers will understand. So that's all about softwares and the two types of softwares, which are application software and system software. Application software is a software which is required to meet end users requirement, and I showed you like Microsoft Word, Chrome, Firefox, Notepad, VS Code, Atom, Oracle, MySQL. These all are called as application software, which are installed above the system software or the operating system. Now when we see system software, so these are the programs that are specifically designed to run computers' application programs and hardware and allocate resources, right? So the best example we saw was operating system. It can be Mac, it can be Linux, it can be Windows. Okay, so now we already saw what an operating system is. So you might be knowing, right? Operating system is a program that acts as an interface between user or the end user and the computer's hardware. Without operating system, a computer is a dumb machine, right? And what does it do? It controls the execution of all kind of program. Absolutely. Without any operating system, you cannot run any application software or programs, right? So for example, we have Microsoft Windows, Mac OS X, you have Sun Solaris. So by the way, if you don't know what are these Sun Solaris, HP UX and IBM AIX, these are called as Unix operating systems that are basically created by these companies. And by the way, Sun is basically now owned by Oracle. So here there is a picture that I have given. So you can see at the very base you have the end user, and above that you have the operating system, and then you have the hardware. So that's how the communication goes on. Let us understand what is Linux. So the term Linux technically refers to just the Linux kernel. So you might have heard many people saying that, hey, you know what, Linux is an operating system. So most people refer to the entire operating system as Linux, because to most users an operating system includes a bundle of programs, okay, and tools, services. Example, like you have desktop, you have a clock, you have an application menu, and so on. So many people might not be knowing what is a kernel. Let me tell you. So the kernel is the heart of the operating system, and basically what it does, it manages the CPU, memory, and peripheral devices. So peripheral devices means you can say keyboard, mouse, etc. The kernel basically is the lowest level of the operating system, which directly interacts with the hardware. So why people call it as an operating system? If you are referring to a particular distribution, you can call it as an operating system. That is because it contains Linux kernel, GNU tools, additional software packages and manager. So that's why many people, they call Linux as a whole operating system as well. So I do not have any problem if anybody calls Linux as a kernel or an operating system. In order to summarize, Linux plus software packages installed makes it a whole operating system, and it is fine if people call or refer it as a whole operating system. So now let me tell you some of the famous distributions of Linux. So we have Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. By the way, Red Hat Enterprise Linux charges you for some subscription amount, and there is another trial version. And if you want to get the full experience of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, I would recommend please go to CentOS, which we will be using in this video series. From the next video, we will go through the installation part of CentOS, and we also have SUSE, and we have another distribution which is called as Fedora. So you can call these as operating systems because they are distributions which contain software packages, kernel of Linux, and it has package managers. So let me tell you where Linux is used nowadays. So today, supercomputers, smartphones, desktop, and web servers, tablet, laptops, and home appliances, for example like washing machines, DVD players, routers, modems, cars, refrigerators, all these things use Linux under the hood. So learning Linux is really very essential if you want to get into a specific job in IT industry. Let's see how Linux came into existence. In 1991, there was a student who was named as Linus Torvalds. His full name is Linus Benedict Torvalds. He was the student of University of Helsinki, which is in Finland. So what he did was, he thought, why don't we create a freely available academic version of Unix? That is the reason when we see, Linux, many say that it's a kind of clone of Unix, and many people, they also say that it is derived from Unix. Okay, so here the main agenda was to make the code freely available, and that is the reason why Linux is open source, and it was released under the GNU General Public License. So its code is available freely and anybody can contribute towards it. So he just started it just for a fun based project, and he was not knowing that it will grow so large. So firstly he wanted to name it as Freaks, but later it became Linux or Linux. Okay. Okay, so let's understand the Linux architecture. So this is very crucial. So you should be knowing if you are studying Linux, so how these things go under the hood. There will be some keywords that I will be using, for example, like shell, the kernel, and hardware you guys might be knowing, right? So hardware is the physical components and the components that are responsible to run your operating system, right? The innermost is the hardware. It consists of hardware related information, and above that you have kernel. So it is the heart of the operating system. It directly interacts with the hardware. Most of the tasks what kernel does is it handles memory management, process management, and task scheduling, file management, providing drivers to the hardware, and so on. So now let's learn about shell. So shell is an environment, or you can also call it as utility, in which we can run our commands. So you can run commands, you can run programs, and you can write shell scripts. As a Unix or Linux user, you cannot directly interact with kernel. So to interact with kernel, you need to have a certain medium, right? So that medium is called as a shell, where you can type and run your commands and script. So when you type the command in the terminal, so the shell, it interprets the command and calls the program that you want. So there are different flavors of shell. Just as there are different flavors of operating system, each flavor of shell has its own set of recognized commands and functions. For example, we have C shell, we have Bourne shell, Conch shell, and Born Again shell, which is also referred as bash, which we will be using in this current video series. And we also have something which is called as POSIX shell. POSIX shell. So different commands we can use. For example, you can see here the shell part. We can use cut command, we can use copy command, we can use move command, we can use grep command, and so on. So there are over 250 plus standard commands and numerous others that are basically provided through third-party software. Then we have which is called as files and directories. So all the data of Unix or Linux is organized into files. All the files are then organized into something which is called as directories, and these directories are further organized into a tree-like structure that is called the file system. So we will be learning file system in a separate video. I'll make a video about file system in Linux, so stay tuned for that. The outermost layer, the very last layer, is called as the application layer, so where you can run application programs. So this basically executes the external applications, like you have mail server, you have FTP server, you have DBMS server, etc. So that explains Linux architecture. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, learned something new, then please motivate me by clicking on that like button. This will give me a motivation to create further more videos. And if you think this video was beneficial, do write it in the comment section below saying that this video was very helpful. And if you are new to my channel, please click on that subscribe button and press that bell icon so that you will never miss any update whenever I will post a new video in future. In the description box below, you can see some of the links to articles that I have given. This will definitely help you to learn more about Linux, how it came into existence, what was the history behind it, and what was the need of creating Linux, and everything I have given in the description box below. So do check it out. It will definitely help you to learn more about Linux. And thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I will see you in my next video. So till then, bye bye. Take care.